Hello and welcome to Let the Bird Fly. This is Wade here in the podcast studio, flying solo because I am recording another session in our Faith Fitness Fellowship Formation series. I believe this is session 8 if I am recalling correctly. And today we are going to be talking about food. I'm sure there will be a number of sessions in this series on food, but today we're just going to kind of talk about food, big picture. The series started off, the first session was on wake-up calls, where I talked about kind of why I needed to get my health back in order, going for my first physical in 20-some years and finding out that I had diabetes and blood pressure and some other issues that I needed to deal with. I didn't want to have to go on a bunch of medications, and so the doctor said, well, let's have a first go at it and see what you can do with diet and exercise, and really that led me to double down on things. And so this series is talking about what I've learned in that process. The second session was on numbers. What numbers have I found it helpful to track? What numbers have I not thought it so important to track? We then talked about strength training versus cardio. I don't want to give that session away, but I talked about the benefits I've found, especially in strength training. We then had a session on the importance of walking, water, and the sun, of getting your steps in for the day, of making sure you stay hydrated, and also getting sun if you can while you're getting those steps. We then talked about rest. It can seem counterintuitive, but if we're going to get things done, if we're going to make progress, we need rest. We then had a session on goals and gains. We have to know what we want to achieve if we're going to try then to achieve it. And so setting your goals against which you can then measure your gains. We can't accomplish everything, but we can try to accomplish some specific things. We then talked about accountability and community, that I am responsible for my choices, for my decisions. If I'm going to get healthier, if I'm going to get more fit, it relies on me especially to work towards that. There's no perfect time to start. There's no perfect situation, but we can do our best in the times and in the situations we find ourselves. And today I want to talk about food. We were at a wedding the other day. Jason's daughter got married. It was a lovely wedding, lovely reception. Great to see a bunch of people. And my wife and I were catching up with a number of people we hadn't seen in a while, and I heard her talking to one of our old friends from college, and he brought up me cooking. And if you follow me on social media, especially on Facebook or Instagram, I should do a better job on Instagram, but especially on Facebook, I'm an old man. Facebook is my jam. You know that I have grown to enjoy cooking, especially grilling, and especially now griddling with my Blackstone. And so I like to post different things I'm working on. And that's not just to be self-indulgent to show, look what I cooked. Sometimes I'm posting things and I say, this didn't turn out as well as I hoped. But I'm hoping, as I've had to kind of learn to view food differently and prepare it differently, that maybe a few people look at that and say, you know what, I know Wade is a busy guy. Wade does things besides simply go to the gym and cook, and yet he's managing to do some of these things. That hopefully it's helpful in people thinking about, well, what am I eating? How am I getting it? How am I making it? How good is it for me? We've all heard the expression before, you are what you eat. That's wonderfully true for Christians in the sense that we partake of Christ's body and blood in the Lord's Supper, and we are his very brothers and sisters. We're sons and daughters of the Heavenly Father. This week, this Sunday, that's the focus. Jesus teaches his disciples to pray, and we pray, Our Father. So we are what we eat in that sense, but we also, when it comes to our physical health and how we feel, and often even our mental health, we are in many ways what we eat. And it's becoming more and more apparent that Americans have not been eating well for quite some time. If you've had the ability, the interest, and the ability and the opportunity to travel, you might have gone to places in the world where you ate things that you thought were very similar to what you eat back home. And maybe they give you a little trouble back home, or you felt differently after eating, and you found out that you felt better after eating abroad, and maybe it didn't bother your health in ways that the equivalent thing here would have. I found this especially with my glucose. In Italy, I was eating pasta and pizza, and yet it wasn't spiking. And actually, it stayed pretty steady while I was in Rome for a little more than a week, and eating foods like that pretty consistently. There's a lot in our foods. Our foods are heavily processed, and I'm not here to say that's all the motives behind that have been terrible things. There's been a real desire to feed the population, to make sure the population gets enough calories, and to help feed the world, especially coming out of the world wars, to make sure that everybody was getting enough calories. And for a long time, we just thought all calories are equal, and so we're going to get people enough calories, and we need to have things last, to be able to be preserved so they can get to people and people can be fed, or they can afford to buy it in bulk and store it. But we've come to find that a lot of what led to our ability to feed people in such a way also led to us eating in ways that haven't proven to be very sustainable for good health. And so I'm just hoping in this session that we can begin a conversation about food. Many of us have thought about what we eat to some degree or another. We've maybe had a day where we ate a lot and we didn't feel great, and so we thought, today I'm gonna eat this or that might help with that. Most of us, when we were young, maybe had a night where we would go out and then you're getting George Webb's or something greasy at the end of the night. That seemed like the appropriate food. Maybe you go on vacation and you want to enjoy a nice breakfast and you're very intentional about what you want to get there. Maybe you're in a new place and there's a very specific restaurant or type of food in that area that you want to try. We go shopping. We have to pick out foods. We think about our foods, but do we often step back and think about them enough? Is this food good for me and good for me for more than just this meal? And is this a food that is a treat for now, or is it something that becomes a habit? Part of the reason I was able to get so out of shape and so unfit is that foods that earlier were a treat became more of a habit. And I was eating a lot of carbs, looking back now, a lot more sugars than I realized. When I had to kind of think through my diet and how I was going to try to get my health metrics better, I was very surprised. And I've been someone who has been healthy in the past and has exercised and has tracked things, but got out of that habit, and I was taken aback by the numbers, the macros that were in my food. I would sometimes look at a label, but more often I would just look on the thing I was buying, and of course the company's going to put things on that make it sound like, these things are great. But to what degree was my food actual, real food? That I hadn't thought enough about. Was I shopping the right part of the store? I live about a block from Aldi. If I jumped the fence in my backyard, I would be at Aldi. I can make dozens of healthy meals from shopping at Aldi at a very reasonable price. I just have to go to the right parts of the store and look for the right things. We live a couple miles from Meijer. We go to Meijer a fair amount. I can cook even more healthy things. And again, at a reasonable price from Meijer. Our backup is Costco, or my wife goes to Sam's Club. I prefer Costco. There's lots of things I can get there as well. Some of those things are things that aren't going to last forever in the fridge. I have to get them and say, I'm going to make these things. I'm going to consume these things. There's still things I get I don't consume, and I know it drives my wife nuts, but I would say there's a lot less of those things now than there used to be. I've become a lot more committed to being intentional about what I'm eating when. In a future session, we can talk about food prep, planning food. I need to get better planning. We're getting back to the fall semester here. I'm coming off sabbatical. I'm serving a vacancy. I'm going to have to be very intentional about planning out the week, and my wife and I do have plans to work on that. We've got 5 kids. Some of them are getting older, but we've come out of, a dozen years where there's a lot of kids and a lot of things, and we've had to scramble. So I'm going to have to get better at planning. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about cooking. What are some things you can make consistently and you can cook in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable amount of effort and with the things that you have in your house. But for today, I'd just like us to start thinking about, is the food we're eating real food? To what degree is it natural food? To what degree is it like the food our great-grandparents would have eaten? To what degree is it like the food that they would have eaten in the New Testament times, that they would recognize it as such? And am I hungry for that food because it's nourishing real food? Or am I hungry for the food for which I'm hungry because it's been designed to make me more and more hungry, not satiated? Along those lines, in a future session, we'll talk a lot more about protein too. But am I getting protein in every meal, and am I eating the protein on my plate first? This runs contrary to how we often think. We usually have all the carbs first, we warm up, then we have the protein. But if I'm eating the protein first and I'm drinking my water, I am going to be satiated. I am going to be full sooner. And I'm going to be full with the good calories, right? And there are better calories. There's foods that have better macros for the amount of calories that they carry. So my challenge for you this week is to just think about what you've eaten over the past week, or watch what you eat this week. Look in your fridge. Look in your cupboard. What do you have? How long is it meant to last? Look at the ingredients. Are there more than 3 or 4 ingredients in it? If so, what are they? You don't have to understand what they all mean, but why are there so many? Look at the nutritional. How much protein is in them? How many carbs? How many sugars? Right? Sugars are, in many instances, just unnecessary calories. How many dyes are in them? What oils are in them? Right? Just how much that needs to be in that food is in it. And then how much in addition. When am I eating it? How much of it am I eating? Let's think about those things, and then we can pick up with more with food later. But especially just, how much real food am I eating? Am I having fruit substitutes, or am I having fruit? Am I getting my protein through actual meat that I'm cooking, or through something processed that's been preserved? If you like cheese, what kinds of cheeses am I having? Is it actual cheese, or would it last forever in my fridge? Would it go bad? These are the types of things I'd like us to think about. And then we can pick up a little bit more with, what kind of macros should I be looking? What foods would I recommend? How can we prepare them? Stuff like that. But am I getting real food, right? And as Christians, food does matter to us. Meals play a pivotal role in the Bible. Abraham just welcomed his 3 visitors last week in our lessons, and then they're about to leave now this week, we'll see, to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and we get this great lesson on prayer. Jesus is often invited to meals. He gives us a meal in the Lord's Supper. The breaking of bread was a sign of fellowship and community. Meals, food is very important. God created food for us. Heaven will be a feast. And so let's think about what we're putting into our bodies. I remember when I used to lift and go to the gym regularly back in Saginaw when I was serving in the parish. There's a wonderful young man, and he came to church sometimes too, which was always a great joy. But he was a professional bodybuilder for a while. He was competing, and so I'd often ask him for tips just on lifting, and he was a very grounded individual. And I remember him telling me, well, with your food, you have to remember, closer to nature and closer to God. And he was saying it partly this way, I think, because I'm a pastor. But what he was getting at is, the more the food we consume is the food as God has given us in this world, right? To hunt and eat, or to grow in the ground, the better that will be for us. And I think that's a good thing for us to remember, closer to nature, closer to God, as far as how God means for our bodies to run with the material gifts, the food and drink that he gives us here. That's not to say you can't have a treat now and then. I have a treat now and then. I've kind of reached where I wanted to go weight-wise. And I've talked about before, I'm kind of reverse dieting a little bit now because I'd like to make some more gains in the gym. I have my treats, but is the majority of our food real food, if I can keep using that phrase? And I think that's something we all have to assess. And I think it's also something when we address, we will find ourselves feeling better and better, and health trending in the right way. Hopefully you find this helpful. Hopefully this is a step for us all towards flourishing. as we strive to grow in faith, in fitness, in fellowship with one another, and in formation, being what God has made us to be, being prepared for the place that he has prepared for us. And in all of that, I pray that we always can let the bird fly.